I had 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what, and why, and when, and how, and where, and who. Welcome to my presentation showing some of the history of the building of the Worcester to Birmingham Canal. The River Severn was a very busy river, with the Severn Trough being built especially to cope with the shallows at low tide, having a flat bottom and a draught of only a few feet. Troughs in their hundreds carried cargo between Bristol and Wales. The Trough was a wooden sailing ship. They were only used on the Severn due to the tide leaving the river very shallow. Most were converted into barges. Finally, by 1939, only the Alma and the Palace were left under sail. One survivor, the Spry, was reconstructed using only 2 of the original planks. They could be fitted with a wooden keel to allow them to sail on the open sea. This picture shows a trough coming through Tewkesbury locks loaded with salt for France. In 1768, James Brindley began construction of the canal linking Birmingham to Stourport at Lower Mitton. The new canals were thought of as the motorways of the time. An Act of Parliament was passed to allow James Brindley to link Birmingham to the Severn. In 1760, the canal terminus was built on meadowland to the southwest of the hamlet of Lower Mitton. The terminus was first called Stourmouth and then Newport, with the final name of Stourport settled on by 1771. The first canals followed the contours, then they decided to go up or under using locks and tunnels. Landowners would often insist on elaborate bridges to link their land. The canals and tunnels were built by hand, by navvies or navigators to give them their proper name. Stourport was chosen rather than Bewdley because the residents of Bewdley didn't want Brindley's stinking ditch running through their town. What a mistake to make. In 1940, the iconic clock warehouse was used by the Corbett family to produce larch lap fencing. The canal was open for boats in 1815, and an invitation to build warehouses is published in the newspaper. The completed Worcester to Birmingham Canal finally opened for traffic in 1815. It seems the Worcester and Birmingham Canal Company got into trouble because by 1873 It was sold out to the Gloucester and Berkeley Canal Company. The canal, which had cost £600,000 to build, was sold for a mere £6,000. In 1840, the question of the Severn navigation was brought up again. This was to provide a canal to miss the estuary of the Severn, which was often closed because of the low tide. A link to a video describing the Severn navigation was posted on the Facebook page. Despite 3 lochs, a salmon managed to swim up the canal and got into Diglis Basin. This occurred in 1865. A railway was proposed to run from the main line at Shrubhill down to Diglis, but this failed. The full story you can find on this video on YouTube. Lowesmoor Wharf was important as a coal port, and I'm sure many of us regard Diglis as the heart of the Worcester Canal system. The attraction of a more rapid and cheaper transport system attracted many businesses to the canal side. However, by 1829, Richard Winnels had put his coal wharf up for sale. By 1846, the locks and weirs were built, raising the water level at Diglis and allowing access to the canal. To save money, the original canal was made 7 feet wide, but by 1923 proposals were put forward to widen it to 14 feet. This proposition was abandoned, no doubt due to the massive costs. On the night of December the 11th, 1960, fire devastated the Albion flour mill. The mill was later developed as apartments. The Anchor Inn, situated at the entrance to Diglis Basins, was opened as a beer house. The canal company tried to close it down, as many boatmen had drowned after getting a drink or two there. Then they'd fallen in the canal. With the river to act as a waterborne pipeline, Shell Oil originally built a depot on the site in 1926. The idea was to bring fuel up the Severn from the refineries at Llandarcy near Swansea by petroleum barges, store it at Worcester and distribute across the industrial West Midlands in a fleet of lorry tankers. The John Harker Company operated barges that were large, 140 feet long and 22 feet wide, the maximum size to fit into the Worcester lock, and were crewed by 4 men with the ability to carry 450 tons, well over 125,000 gallons. In the 1990s, the oil basin was closed. Then up rose the new development. By the middle of the 20th century, much of the canal system had been abandoned and was full of rubbish. Teams of volunteers turned out to clean this rubbish and bring the canals back into use by pleasure craft. And as we see the pleasure boats travelling up through Worcester today, we must remember that without the back-breaking work of these men who dug by hand the canals and built the locks and weirs that raised the water levels in the Severn, we would not have enough water at low tide to allow the modern pleasure craft to pass by.